To Cape Town now, because China is experiencing natural economic growing pains, according to specialist Michael Power, who's with Investec. He conceded that growth would be slower, but off an ever-growing base. Power joins us now to explain what impact these growing pains have, not only on the Asian superpower, but also for the rest of the world. Hi, Michael. Good to have you back in studio.
Nice to see you.
One of our men who's been watching the Chinese growth story over the years. At the recent Congress, there were some quite significant decisions. Most of the world picked up on the one-child policy. We did talk to Martin Davies about that. He said, that's not really the thrust. There were other issues that, in his opinion anyway, were more important. How did you view it?
I agree with Martin. I think that the central issue that was of importance was that they were going to do what Adam Smith said in the Wealth of Nations. And Adam Smith, one often must be reminded, did not support free markets. He supported free competition, which is a much more profound insight. And I think what you're going to see in China over the next few years is the introduction of competition into a lot of the areas which previously had been the preserve of the state-owned enterprises. This for me is, and I'm using the word they've used, decisive.
Fascinating stuff, Michael, and particularly because we were brought into BRICS by the Chinese, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So I guess we have to pay very close attention to what's happening there.
I think we do. I think that when we can look back on what's been going on in this part of the world in 50 years' time, we'll realize that this third plenary session was a critical one in the same way that Deng Xiaoping won in 1979 was a critical one.
Yes, I mean, it's often exercised my mind as the dollar being the central currency in the world, and quite a few people in the emerging markets saying, why can't the renminbi or the RMB start taking more of a role there? Do you think it's inevitable?
It is already taking. I see in a Wall Street Journal yesterday that it's now become the second largest currency in the world in terms of the denomination of trade finance. One has to remember that the Americans overtook the Brits probably 1895. But for another 30 years beyond that, sterling was the world's largest reserve currency, partly because of the importance that gold still played in the world of trade and finance at that time. I think the United States dollar will continue to be the world's largest currency for a considerable period of time after China becomes the world's leading economy. But that doesn't mean that slowly but surely the renminbi isn't going to, and actually quite quickly but surely, the renminbi will assume its proper place in the world of finance.
Michael, it's Gugu here. Just coming back to the relationship between China and South Africa, many people believe that China is potentially benefiting more from this partnership perhaps, or the union within the BRICS nations. How do you value this? How do you evaluate it rather? Is South Africa benefiting perhaps from its relationship with China?
The bee pollinates the flower it uses. I think the relationship, not just with South Africa, but with Africa, is a difficult one in the sense that it's hard to understand. And I don't think we're immediately understanding the role that China is playing in transforming Africa's economy. But what we are beginning to see, and it's most obvious in East Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, is that we're beginning to see assembly plants move out of Asia, where now wages have risen to such a level, especially in China, they're no longer competitive, and move into East Africa and begin the industrialization process. Sadly, here in South Africa, we're not feeling that effect.
Michael, we need to wrap up now, but I can't let you go without using or tapping into your world view and this whole story that's going on around Adcock Ingram, with the Chileans coming into the country or hoping to make that investment, and then a South African operation competing with them. In the context of the developmental state, is this quite a big deal?
I think it's a very big deal, and there are two things. I don't want to be commenting on the specifics, but two things that strike me. First of all, in any company where there's just a 35% stake being bid for, there's a risk that you're selling control of the company without getting a control premium when you do so. So I think we have to ask Bidvest in that regard exactly what they're getting and why they are getting into it. And the second thing is, and I detect a very unpleasant whiff of economic nationalism on the part of South Africa towards the Chileans here. And I think we need to be a little bit more open-minded in our view, just as many South African companies have gone abroad and done very successfully by doing so. So too, when a foreign company comes into South Africa, I think we need to accord them the same acceptance that by and large South African companies have been afforded when they've moved abroad. Do remember, South African breweries went into Colombia. Indeed, Colombia is, I now think, the largest source of profits of any one country to South African breweries. And we were welcomed when we went into Colombia. So perhaps we need to be a little bit more open-minded towards the Chileans when they come here.
Well, some interesting insights there being shared from Michael Power, who is from Investec.